I woke up after the stroke, alone in a hospital room. No wife, no friends, not a single message. The only person there was someone I once fired. I lay there, listening to the steady beeping of the heart monitor. The air reeked of antiseptic. No flowers, no cards, not a word from anyone. I'm Brandon Hale, 39. Used to have a house, a car, a beautiful wife, a big title. People used to call me the man who never breaks. But that morning, I was left with just one thing: silence. From all the people who once said, "I'll always be there for you." The door opened. Someone walked in. Not my wife, not a colleague, not a friend. A woman, with a paper bag and a bottle of water. Her face was familiar, but I couldn't place her name at first. Took me a few seconds to realize. It was Lena, my former technical assistant, the one I let go for not fitting in. I remember signing her dismissal in less than 10 minutes. After some meeting I barely remember. I didn't hate her. I didn't even really know her. She just wasn't the right fit. At least, that's what I told myself. And yet here she was, sitting beside my bed, pouring me a glass of water, and asking, "Are you okay?" That simple question nearly broke me, not out of emotion, but because I had no idea what to say. Okay? After losing my company, my house, my wife, and nearly my life, okay? When the only person by my side was someone I once showed the door without a second thought, I nodded, not because I was okay, but because I had nothing left to say. She smiled, gently. No judgment, no bitterness. No one else came. No texts, no calls, nothing. And in that silence, I realized something. I might have been a great boss, a decent husband, an inspiring figure. But if silence is all I'm left with in the end, then I failed. I still don't know what really happened after the stroke. But I do know one thing. Everything I once believed in is falling apart. I used to think I was a good man. Didn't drink. Never laid a hand on my wife. Never forgot a birthday or our anniversary. I got up early, went to work, came home on time, never let her go without anything she needed. I thought that was enough to be called a decent husband. I'm Brandon Hale, 39, former senior project director at one of Minnesota's biggest construction firms. Managed hundreds of people, millions in budget. I was the kind of guy people could count on to get things done. I wasn't good with words. I didn't know how to make people feel comfortable. But I kept things running. Projects, year-end parties, whatever needed to be done. I was the gear that kept the machine turning. And in my world, everything was a project, even marriage. Claire, my wife, was the only person who ever made me sit and listen for 2 straight hours without checking the time. She worked in PR for a nonprofit, talkative, sharp, and always bringing up things I never really noticed. We got married less than a year after meeting. At first, we lived in a small apartment. Winters were brutal. We'd huddle together at night just to stay warm. I used to love watching her make hot cocoa, wrap herself in a blanket, and read by the window. I'd lie there next to her, just listening to the sound of pages turning. When I got promoted, we moved into a real home. White fence, big porch, swing chair, and the apple tree Claire planted the first spring. She said, "Every season it bears fruit. It means we're still together." I nodded. Didn't think much of it. Then the work trip started. Back-to-back meetings. I hired cleaners, landscapers, handymen. Made sure Claire didn't have to lift a finger. I thought that was love. I thought I was a good husband. Faithful, reliable, never broke a promise. But I forgot one thing. To sit down, put the phone away, and listen. Claire didn't complain. She just went quiet. And I was too busy to realize how terrifying that silence could be. Until one night, she asked me, "Are you still happy?" I was writing a report. Looked up, smiled slightly. "Why would you ask that?" "I just want to know, if we had to start over tomorrow, would you still choose me?" I frowned. "What's going on? Are you upset?" "No, I just need to know." That night, she turned her back to me in bed, and I went back to analyzing risk projections for the Lakeside housing project. I didn't know. That would be the last question Claire ever asked me. The last chance I had to see the cracks forming right under our roof. And for the rest of my life, I'd wish I could hear that question one more time, just so I'd know how to answer. After that night, Claire never asked anything again. She still got up early, still made breakfast, still smiled politely when I talked about the construction site. But her eyes, something in them had changed. They felt distant. And I thought, everything's fine. She's just being a woman, probably overthinking things. What I didn't see was that I'd been living next to someone who had already given up. She just hadn't left yet. At the time, I was leading the biggest project of my career, a $200 million residential complex. The company had full trust in me. I practically lived at the site, slept in the office, meetings back to back. Claire still called every night. "Did you eat yet? Are you cold?" I'd answer half-heartedly, eyes still glued to blueprints. I thought, once I finish this project, I'll take her on a long vacation. She'll understand. But I never finished the project, and there was no one left to take anywhere. One late evening, I came home early. First time in weeks. The lights were still on. My heart beat a little faster. I thought, you waited for me finally. But instead of a smile, I saw a small envelope on the dining table. Beside it, a glass of water, still warm, like someone had just been there a minute ago. I opened the letter. Her handwriting, familiar, neat, and the first line hit me like a punch to the chest. "Brandon, I tried to wait for you to come back, not just home, but back to me. But you never really left work. I don't blame you. I just don't have the strength anymore. Don't look for me. Just live, really live. And listen, for once in your life." No anger, no accusations, no farewell. She just left. I dropped to the floor, back against the fridge, holding that letter like I'd just been shot. I didn't know whether to cry, or scream, or do anything at all. I called. Her phone was off. I texted. No reply. For the next week, I moved like a ghost, drove to work in silence, came home to no one, ate cold cup noodles, sat alone on the couch Claire once picked, because it's perfect for movie nights together. I don't remember where exactly I collapsed. All I remember was waking up under the harsh white lights of a hospital room. I thought I had just lost a woman. What I didn't know was that it was only the beginning of losing everything else. 3 weeks after Claire left, I kept showing up to work, like a machine running on broken code. No days off, no small talk, no close friends at the office. No one knew I was living alone in a house filled only with the hum of the fridge and my ex-wife's sweater still draped over the arm of the sofa. Work became the only rope keeping me from falling off the edge. The more I lost, the tighter I clung to it. Because if I let go, I'd free fall into the emptiness inside me. The Northern Residential Project was entering its most critical phase. I checked every blueprint, every spreadsheet, every approval email myself. I slept in my office chair, ate canned noodles, kept telling myself, you still matter. One night, close to 11 p.m., I was staring at my screen when I heard a soft knock. It was the new guy, nervous look on his face. "Sir, there's something I think you should know." I looked up. He spoke quietly. The CEO had a closed-door meeting with finance. I overheard, "They're considering a management restructure." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "They're talking about cutting high-salary roles, and your name came up." I froze. I was leading the biggest project of the year. Cut me? Who else would make sense of the 500 pages of technical specs I hadn't even cleaned up yet? I nodded. "Thanks for telling me." He left. I stayed, alone. Outside, light rain started to fall. Just like the night Claire walked out. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I got the email. Restructure meeting, HR and executive team. I knew. Farewells always begin with a neutral subject line. The meeting room was cold, bright. 3 people waited, CFO, head of HR, and Chase Morgan, the new CEO. The guy who once asked me to give up my parking spot, but never once said, "Thank you." Chase started in that polished tone, straight out of a leadership seminar. "Brandon, first of all, I want to say you're one of the most respected people here." I stared back, expressionless. But as you know, the market's shifting. The company needs to be leaner, more agile. The current project will be reassigned to a younger team. We had to make a tough decision. I cut in. You're cutting me? Not you. The position. So in other words, I cost too much to keep. Chase gave a polite smile. No answer. I looked him dead in the eye. You realize over 40% of the design data isn't even in the system yet? It's in my head, in my notebook, in hand-drawn drafts. We trust the incoming team will handle it, and we'd appreciate your help with the transition. I laughed. You're kicking me off the project I built, and asking me to train the guy replacing me. We believe it's the professional thing to do. I stood up. I'll hand over whatever's on paper. The rest, good luck. Back at my desk, everything was still there. Blueprints half open, coffee still warm. The screen still showed the note I'd typed last night. Review power supply system, Block D. I looked around. No one knew I'd just lost my job. No one asked. I shut down my computer, packed my things. 10 years of work, neatly boxed in a company-issued container. Looked more like a lunchbox than a career. On the drive home, I turned on the radio. An old jazz track started playing, the same one Claire used to play every Sunday morning. I turned it off instantly. I couldn't take one more memory. 3 days after getting fired, I still woke up at 6 a.m., put on a button-down shirt, made coffee, and opened my laptop, as if work was still waiting for me. Truth is, I had no one to prove anything to. But I kept acting like a man who hadn't lost everything. Maybe because I was scared. Scared that if I stopped, I'd have to face the truth. I had nothing left. I sent out over 20 resumes, attached my track record, letters of recommendation, even a brief summary of the $200 million project I had led. No one replied. The first week passed. I forced myself to do small things, clean the house, wash the blankets, sort through old files. I packed Claire's things into a box, sealed it, and tucked it away in the closet. The house looked cleaner, but emptier too, like a showroom unit no one had moved into yet. By the second week, I started sleeping more. Cold coffee sat untouched in the cup. The laptop gathered dust. My phone stayed silent. An email came from the bank. Mortgage payment due. Balance insufficient. I withdrew the last of my retirement savings and wired it over, like slapping duct tape on a crack in a dam about to burst. One late afternoon, I went to the store. At checkout, my card got declined. I stared at the screen in disbelief. The young cashier hesitated. "I'm sorry, sir. Insufficient funds." I pulled a crumpled 20 out of my pocket. "Just give me the eggs and the noodles." That night, I ate alone. Unseasoned noodles. No taste. But I didn't have the energy to feel that emptiness anymore. I turned on the TV. A home makeover show was playing. A young couple painting walls, laughing, arguing about curtains. It hit me. Claire once asked me what color we should paint the living room. I told her, "Anything's fine." She went quiet, and I thought I was being easygoing, not controlling. Looking back, all she wanted was for me to sit down and choose with her. I turned off the TV. The room went dark. That night, I had a fever dream. My body was burning. My chest ached. My left arm felt like it was being crushed. I tried to get up, called 911. My voice was barely audible. I think I'm having a stroke." The rest is a blur. Sirens, flashing red lights. I remember trying to say, "My name is Brandon Hale." When I woke up, all I saw was a white ceiling. Then, the sound of a breathing machine. Then cold air crawling into my hands. I turned my head. The only person sitting next to my hospital bed was Lena. She used to work for me. I fired her 2 years ago for underperformance. I signed her termination in under 3 minutes. Never asked why. Didn't know her full name. Barely remembered her face. And yet now, she was the first person who showed up. She held a cup of water. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I saw your name on the admission board. I still had your old number. I just thought, you shouldn't be here alone." I didn't say anything. I turned to the wall. Not out of shame, but because I was scared. scared that if I looked at her any longer, I'd break down like a child. I used to believe, if you're good enough, you'd never have to beg. I used to think, people I let go were simply not good enough. I used to believe, a career was armor, life insurance for a man. But now, the only hand holding mine belonged to someone I once decided wasn't worth keeping. If this is rock bottom, it's cold, it's silent, and no one can tell you who'll show up beside you when you finally hit it. I was discharged 3 days later. The doctor said I was lucky. Any later, and I might not have made it. But I didn't feel lucky. I just felt like I still owed life an explanation. I stepped back into the house I'd lived in for nearly 12 years. The damp smell clung to everything. The wedding photo on the shelf was still tilted, just like the day Claire left. I reached out to fix it, then stopped. Not out of anger, but because I was no longer the man in that photo. The next morning, I opened my laptop. Not to work, but to count down the days before the bank would take the house. My account balance, under $500. Mortgage due in 21 days. I signed up to be a delivery rider, not because I had no choice, but because I had run out of illusions. 3 days later, I picked up the delivery bag, put on a reflective vest, and rode the same old bike Claire and I once used for picnics. She used to tease me, "I'll never trust an engineer who doesn't know how to walk a bike." I laughed at the memory, then fell silent. On my first delivery, I caught my reflection in a car window. Wrinkled shirt, overgrown hair, hollow eyes. I used to think I'd rather die than do work that felt beneath me. Now, I just needed to live and eat. That first day, I showed up on time, delivered everything right. What I didn't expect was the look. Not of pity, not of judgment, but the kind of look that didn't even bother to look. I walked into the lobby of a high-end building, holding a takeout bag, said hello to the receptionist. She didn't lift her head. Leave it on the table. On my way out, the security guard scanned me from head to toe like I was dust stuck to the tile. 10 years ago, I walked into places like that as a consultant. People stood up when I entered. Now I walked in, and no one knew who I had been. Strangely, no one was wrong. I really wasn't that man anymore. I worked 2 weeks as a delivery rider. Every night I came home with sore legs, an aching back, and laid out bills on a quiet living room floor. One night, as I typed on my laptop, my phone lit up. Unknown number. "Hi Brandon, this is Lena. I have a friend working on a community development project in West End. They're looking for a consulting engineer. Not high pay, but I think you'd enjoy it." I read it again. And again. Gratitude, mixed with a sharp sting. I once signed Lena's termination in 3 minutes. Never asked why. Never remembered her face. Now, she was offering me a hand. I typed, "I'm ready, thank you." Deleted it. Typed again. "Thanks. If they need me, I'll be there." Sent. The next morning, I biked to the address Lena gave me. An old building, being remodeled into a center for underprivileged kids. I met Jules, the project lead. Worn jeans, hair tied back, eyes sharp and quick. "You're Lena's friend?" "Used to be her boss. But I guess now it's the other way around," she laughed. "Good. No bosses here. You know how to read blueprints? I've designed 14 buildings. Then take a look at the water systems. If anything's wrong, cross it out." I nodded. No business card, no title, no KPIs. Just a pencil, a sheet of paper, and the sound of children running down the hall. I held the pencil, slowly traced the water lines. My eyes moved across the valves, pipes, and hidden flows. Outside the window, sunlight spilled across the old concrete floor. Laughter echoed down the corridor, like a blueprint for life, one I'd forgotten how to read. I came back to the site the next day. No one asked what I used to be. No one introduced me as a seasoned engineer. Here, if you can draw, draw. If you can mix cement, mix. If you don't, pull bricks, carry water, hold the ladder. I chose to redraw the ground floor's water system. Blunt pencil, damp paper, a wobbly wooden chair. And strangely, my heart felt more steady than any blueprint I'd ever held before. One day, while I was inspecting the drainage behind the building, a kid, maybe 8, ran up to me, feet muddy, eyes bright like bike lights. "Mister, what are you fixing?" I knelt down and pointed at the pipes. "I'm mapping the water lines, so you guys won't have clogged showers later." He tilted his head, eyes wide. "I thought water just comes out of the wall." I laughed. "Even walls need someone to help the water flow." He nodded, stuck out his hand. "I'm Max." I shook it. "I'm Brandon." He grinned. "Your name sounds like a superhero." I watched him run off. Something in me went still. I couldn't remember the last time someone said I was anything close to a superhero. Couldn't remember the last time I truly felt useful. That afternoon, I ran into Jules on the second floor. She was counting tiles, paint on her jeans, hair tied up. "Team meeting at 5. You free?" "Free, but not used to meetings without a projector." "Here, if you remember." "Great. If not, just do it again." I laughed. "How long have you been working here?" 3 years. "Why not go somewhere easier?" "Because I grew up in a place like this. Someone helped me. Now, I'm giving back." I didn't say anything. Her answer was light as wind, but it hit me like a drill straight to the heart. That evening, I biked past a big construction site, the kind of place where my name used to be on the project board. Now, it wasn't. I stopped, looked for a minute, then kept riding. No regret, no bitterness, just gratitude for having once stood there. That weekend, I was assigned to design the kids' play area. Nothing fancy, but I treated it more seriously than million-dollar projects I'd done before. Where should the slide go so it doesn't get sunblasted at noon? How low should the faucet be so little kids can turn it on themselves? Where to plant trees so they give shade, but don't mess with the plumbing? I used to call these petty details. Now, I see them for what they are. Little things that help people live a little happier. A month later, the project was almost done. Max came running again, sand on his shoes, grin bright as ever. "Mr. Brandon, Mom said this place opens next week." I nodded. "You'll be the first one to play here." He threw his arms around me. Suddenly. Tight. Both arms wrapped full. I stood still. I couldn't remember the last time someone hugged me. Maybe. Not since before Claire left. I used to think I didn't need anyone to touch me anymore. But now, just one hug from a child made me want to live one more day. I stood there, looking at the finished blueprint of the playground. And for the first time in years, I didn't want to change a thing. It was a Saturday. The center opened for trial. Kids filled the yard. Parents stood under trees, chatting, smiling in the shade. I stood from a distance, watching Max slide down the rope stairs. He waved at me, yelling through the breeze, "Mr. Brandon, the slide is super smooth." I smiled and waved back. A small joy, warm as early winter sunlight. I was checking the water spout at the far end of the yard when I heard a voice behind me. Soft, but enough to pull at something deep in my chest. "Brandon." I turned around. Claire stood there, simple dress, hair tied low, holding the hand of a little girl. Maybe 5. She had Claire's eyes from years ago, deep and always slightly tilted. My heart ached, not out of jealousy, but peace. I used to think that seeing her happy with someone else would break me, but right then, seeing that child's hand in hers, I just felt calm, like everything had found its place. "Claire," I said softly. She nodded. Her eyes weren't quite sad, but not quite joyful either. "I saw your name on the volunteer list. I didn't expect—" "Just temporary. A few months," I replied, trying to sound casual. She stayed quiet. The little girl kept holding her mother's hand, staring at me. I knelt down and smiled at her. "Hey there." She hesitated, then asked softly, "Are you the water engineer?" I laughed. "Yeah, I guess I am." Claire laughed too. A real laugh, like from a long, long time ago. She told the little girl to go play for a bit. When it was just the two of us, she turned to me and said quietly, "I'm sorry." I looked at her. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I needed to hear those words. But I didn't push them away either. "Back then, I panicked," she said. "I knew you were falling. But I didn't have the strength to pull you back. I nodded. I don't blame you, honestly. At that point, I didn't want anyone to pull me up. I was afraid I'd drag them down with me. Claire lowered her head, a tired kind of bow. You were the most capable man I knew, but also the loneliest. I couldn't stand being there, yet still losing you. I looked out into the yard. Max was running with the little girl, chasing each other around a planter, laughing like they'd never heard of heartbreak. I asked softly, "Is she?" "Not your child," Claire said, straightforward. "I met her father after I left you. We're not together anymore." I nodded. No shock. Just a feeling like someone gently pressed a hand to an old scar. "You're different now," Claire said. "Not because of work. Because you know how to stop. And you know how to listen." I stayed silent. Her words were like a mirror, held up by the one person who once knew me best. "You used to not know how to ask, 'Are you okay?'" she said with a faint smile. "You only knew how to solve problems. But now you know how to say, 'I'm the water engineer,' and make a kid laugh." I looked at her. No distance between us. No need for explanations. Just a quiet recognition from someone who once let go and came back, not to hold on, but simply to see. Claire sat with me for a while. No one asked, "So, what are we now?" No one said, "What if?" In that courtyard, filled with children's laughter, two people who once shared a marriage just sat, as if everything had already been said. When the little girl came back, Claire stood up and quietly said, "Thank you for still being Brandon." I smiled. "Thank you for once being Claire." She didn't reply, just took her daughter's hand and walked away. I stood there watching. No pain, no longing, no regret. Just lightness. That afternoon, I walked home. Didn't take the bike. Passed by an old shop and saw a small wooden photo frame engraved with the words, "Home isn't where you're from. It's where you were seen." I stood there for a while, then went in and bought it. Not for anyone, just for myself. A reminder. The next morning, I got to the site earlier than usual. Max was waiting at the gate, holding a deflated soccer ball. "Mr. Brandon, can you fix this?" I laughed. "I used to design high-pressure pipelines for city water plants. I think I can manage a soccer ball." He shoved the ball into my hands and ran off. I watched him go, and suddenly it hit me. When you stop trying to be seen, that's when you're truly seen. At noon, I pulled out a scrap of paper and scribbled a few lines, then slipped it into the mailbox outside the center. I'm leaving soon, not because I don't need this place anymore, but because this place gave me what I needed. Thank you for letting me be a water engineer and teaching me how to be a person again. Brandon. That night, I shut my laptop, packed up my sketch tools. No detailed plan, just this. Tomorrow, I'd walk a different way. Not back to the old world, not chasing some new one, just continuing. With enough humility and enough gratitude. I opened the wooden frame I'd bought, placed a new photo inside, Max, laughing, arms out like a sparrow, right in the middle of the playground. Behind him, the water line I designed with a dull pencil. I set the frame on my desk, next to a blank notebook. No need to write anything, just leave it there. Because sometimes, when there's nothing left to write, that's when you finally know where you're going. 3 weeks after leaving the center, I moved to a small coastal town down south. No skyscrapers, no traffic lights, and no one knew who I used to be. I rented an old wooden house on a gentle slope, moss-covered roof tiles, exposed wood grain walls, and a backyard with no fence, just a line of hibiscus separating me from the neighbors. The owners were an elderly couple. His name was George, hers, Lillian. They'd lived here for nearly 40 years, growing avocados and making jam for the locals. George didn't ask what I used to do. He just quietly handed me the key, pointed at the rain tank on the roof, and said, "If it rains hard at night, check the pipe. Gets clogged easy." I nodded. Didn't promise to fix it. Didn't need to. The first morning, I woke at 5 a.m., without an alarm. Sunlight slipped through the blinds, turning the room gold like honey. Birdsong in the distance, like the background music from some childhood film I half remembered. Coffee brewed with an old metal filter, set on a scratched wooden table out on the porch. No meetings, no deadlines, no one waiting for me to open Zoom. Just the clink of a spoon stirring coffee and the sound of my own quiet sigh. I asked myself, not for the first time, but for the first time seriously, am I truly living or just pausing between two lives? I didn't have an answer, but I knew, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't forcing myself just to stay afloat. I bought an old red bicycle from a nearby repair shop. Rust on the frame, bent rack. The bell rang like a spoon hitting a tin can. But it worked. Every morning, I rode along the coast, where the salty wind tangled in my hair and sand crunched under the tires. No motivational podcasts, no chill playlists, just riding, to remind myself I could still move forward. One afternoon, I stopped outside a small bookstore. Dusty glass door, wooden sign, handwritten letters leaning slightly. Ellie's Corner, books, coffee, and quiet. Ellie was maybe 50, salt and pepper hair, reading glasses, soft, raspy voice. Looking for something? A blank notebook. She nodded, pulled one from the drawer, soft leather cover, red-stitched spine. Starting over? I shook my head. No. Just want to write down things I don't want to forget. She smiled, whispered, "Writing it down is how we survive without having to scream." That night, I sat on the porch, notebook resting on my lap. No title, no date, just one line. You stop fearing being forgotten the day you learn to remember yourself. I set the pen down. Sometimes. One sentence is enough to anchor you in days that keep drifting by. I thought I'd live like that for a long while, between the sea, the wind, and half-written pages. But then, one Wednesday afternoon, while I was fixing George's garden faucet, my old phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, but something told me to answer. "Mr. Brandon?" A tiny voice came through. I froze. My chest tightened just a little. "Max?" "Yeah, it's me. How are you? Do you still remember me?" I laughed. The wind blew into the receiver, and I had to shield it with my hand. "Of course I remember. I even remember your super smooth slide." Max giggled on the other end. "I found your number in the volunteer files. My mom helped me call." A lump rose in my throat. I couldn't speak for a few seconds. "How's the center?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Still busy. But the back faucet broke. No one knows how to fix it like you did." I didn't say anything. Then Max whispered, "I miss you. I miss how you'd draw water maps. I miss that hug. It was really warm." I took a deep breath. I had once led teams of engineers, spoken before city councils, signed contracts worth millions. But no one had ever told me that my hug was warm. That night, I took out the leather notebook Ellie sold me. Flipped to a fresh page. I wrote, "People don't always remember us for the big things. Sometimes, they just need someone to sit with when the sky looks like rain." I closed the notebook, sat on the porch for a long time. The moon was thin. The wind carried salt from the sea. I didn't plan to return to the city. Didn't need to become somebody again. But I would send Max a handwritten letter and include a simple sketch, how to fix that faucet. I believed he'd figure it out. And if not, at least he'd know he was remembered. A week later, I got a postcard from the center. Max had drawn a picture of Mr. Brandon, holding a wrench, standing under flowing water. Below it, in crooked handwriting, "Thank you for teaching me how to hear the sound of water." I sat still, not out of emotion, but because I'd forgotten. We don't live to become the perfect blueprint. We live so that someday a stream of water might pass through us and leave us damp. Since then, every week, I still bike out to the coast. But now, I carry a leather string around my neck, with the old key to the center resting on my chest. Not to go back, just to remember. I was once part of something small, but kind. When people lose everything, they think they need to start over. But sometimes, all they need is enough quiet to remember why they started in the first place. I still keep the habit of sitting on the porch every morning. Black coffee, notebook with no dates, and a young avocado sprout I planted from a seed, just to remind myself, some things take a very long time before they're ready to grow. I'm not living better, just simpler. No one here knows I once led a city engineering project. No one calls me Brandon, the guy who drew water lines accurate down to the millimeter. People just call me the neighbor with the avocado tree, or that guy who bikes in the early morning. And strangely, I don't feel like I've lost anything. I used to think a person's worth was tied to their title, bank balance, or how many people knew their name. But I've learned, real worth is sometimes just a child remembering your hug, an old man smiling because you fixed a leaky faucet he'd given up on. It's when someone trusts you, without needing to know your resume. When you don't have to become something, just to be allowed to stay. One time, I sat with George, the landlord, under the avocado tree in the backyard. He looked at me, poured me a cup of tea, and said, "You know, I used to be in the army, worked at a shipyard, lost everything in a fire." I stayed silent. He sipped his tea, then exhaled slowly. People remember who you were, until you're no longer anyone. But if you live long enough, true enough, they'll remember you for how you made them feel. I looked at him, didn't say a word, just nodded. That line, I still remember, like a red thread stitching through the scattered pieces of my life. I don't write much in the notebook anymore, but there's one page marked with a dried avocado leaf. On it, I wrote, "I once lost everything, status, love, confidence, even a reason to get out of bed. But then I found something simple. I could sit still, and my heart no longer screamed." And to me, that's healing. I know people always look for a clear ending. A what now? A final twist. A slow motion shot, tears falling, sunlight through someone's hair. But real life doesn't end that way. It just gives you moments where you feel a little lighter. Moments where your chest doesn't tighten at the mention of an old name. Where you can smile remembering something that once hurt. Or just sit under a tree and still find yourself loving a quiet morning. If you're still on your way back to yourself, I don't have advice. But I do have something that's been true for me. Healing isn't becoming a better version of yourself. It's being quiet enough to hear your own breath again. And if you've heard that breath, then congratulations. You're alive, not to prove, but to feel. I'm Brandon. I used to be an engineer, a husband, a failure. Now I'm just someone living, quietly and truly. If you've ever fallen, ever felt lost, broken, sleepless, I don't know who you are, but I know what that feels like. And I believe, if you're still here, still reading this, still listening to this last minute, you are stronger than you think. Not because you never fell, but because you stood up, softly, without needing anyone to see. The end.